One quick second, President Peterson. Okay, so our dynamic technology team figured it out, and she will be able to be on the platform and with her picture and be able to speak. Okay. While we're working that out, President Peterson, we are in the process of logging on for YouTube as well.
Okay.
Recording in progress.
We are on.
This special meeting of the Board of School Directors will please come to order. Will the secretary please call the roll?
Director Carr?
Present.
Director Garcia? Director Garcia did notify our office that she would be excused late for tonight. She is here?
She's signing in.
Okay,
In
great.
process.
Great. Okay. Director Gokul Gandhi?
Present.
Director Herndon?
Present.
Director Leonard?
Present.
Director O'Halloran?
Present.
Director Simpson?
Present.
Director Taylor?
In attendance.
And it looks like Director Garcia is logging on. I see her connecting. And Director Garcia, we're taking the attendance, is present. And President Peterson.
Present.
We have 9 members of the board present.
Thank you. Will the secretary please read the call of the meeting? Actually, should we do the Pledge of Allegiance first?
Actually, we should read the call. You were correct.
Okay, go ahead.
At the request of President Robert E. Peterson, a special meeting of the Board of Directors will be held at 5:30 p.m. on Thursday, June 17, 2021 on the following items. 1, the report with possible action regarding the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund, ESSER 3 funds. The MPS building, the central office building, is closed to the public due to ongoing public health concerns related to COVID-19 pandemic. This meeting will be held virtually. However, members of the board are joining and are present, joining the meeting from the Central Services Building. Testimony will be taken during tonight's meeting. Those who wish to speak were required to register in advance and received a participation number. Written comments may be submitted to the Office of Board Governance by mail at 5225 West Belich Street, Milwaukee 53208, by email to governance@milwaukee.k12.wi.us, or by fax to 414-475-8071. Public comments received before 3 p.m. on June 17, 2021 were sent to the board members for consideration. This meeting is also broadcast on WYMS Radio 88.9 FM and on Time Warner Spectrum Channel 13 and via the live MPS broadcast YouTube stream.
Thank you. The chair will now ask the secretary to lead us in the recitation of the Pledge of Allegiance. Directors, please mute your devices.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Before we begin tonight's meeting, we have a short announcement regarding interpretation services for the Spanish-speaking members of our audience.
Bienvenidos. Esta junta escolar se transmitirá en español para aquellas personas que lo necesiten. Para escuchar esta junta escolar en español, marque el número 312-799 y ponga el número de la junta 608-130-5362. Le repito, para escuchar esta junta en español, marque el número 312-626-6799 y ponga el 5362. Gracias.
Gracias. Due to the contingencies of the COVID-19 public health pandemic, MPS buildings are closed to the public, and this meeting is being conducted virtually. Board members may be participating from the central services. In order to allow as much participation as possible, this meeting is being broadcast on the radio station WIMS 88.9 FM via live stream on the MPS website and on the MPS YouTube stream, the links to which can be found on the MPS website on the broadcast page. For each of the following items of business, we will hold a discussion and public hearing. Individuals who wish to speak on tonight's items are required to register in advance. I ask those who are waiting to speak to remain on the platform until you are called upon to speak. Just as a reminder, Robert's Rules of Orders dictates that all comments should be directed to the chair of the committee. Also, any questions or requests are to be directed toward the chair, who will determine the most efficient way to address them. All speakers are asked to state their name and spell their last name before proceeding with their comments. Each speaker will have 2 minutes and 15 seconds to speak. After a speaker's time is up, they may continue to follow the meeting at one of the broadcast options mentioned previously. To ensure the good order of the meeting, harassment or intimidation tactics of any kind, including inappropriate language, will not be tolerated. The chair reserves the right to remove anyone engaging in such behavior from the platform. Those removed from the platform may continue to listen to the meeting or access the agenda items online. However, he or she will not be allowed to rejoin the platform. Written testimony, again, may be submitted to the Office of Board Governance, P.O. Box 2181, Milwaukee 53201, or fax to 414-475-8071, or email it to governance@milwaukee.k12.wi.us. Also, for listening audience, if you wish to access this evening's agenda items and attachments online, you may do so by visiting esb.milwaukee.k12.wi.us. In an effort to provide the public with the greatest level of transparency, tonight, the administration will present information that has been received relative to proposed ESSER 3 funding. While numbers may be stated or outlined in documents, I want to alert everyone of the fact that we have not yet received, nor have we submitted, an application for ESSER 3 funding. The dollar amounts earmarked for the Milwaukee Public Schools districts may vary, given that funding is what we call pass-through funding. This means that the federal government sends a pot of money to the state, and the state disperses it to school districts. That being said, I would like to reiterate that the purpose of tonight's meeting is to receive an update from the administration and hear from the public around the proposed ESSER 3 funding for the Milwaukee Public School students. Now, let us begin. Madam Secretary, item 1.
Item 1 is a report with possible action regarding the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund, ESSER 3. This is an informational item, and although it has been noticed for possible action, no action is required.
Thank you. Will the administration please present the item?
Good evening, President Peterson and members of the board. Keith Posley, Superintendent of Schools. The purpose of this item before you this evening is to provide an important background information on ESSER 3 funding. At this time, I will ask that Martha Kreisman provide an overview of the essential points, including the fact sheets and items that are before you. And after, we will be more than happy to respond to any questions that you may have. Martha.
Good evening, President Peterson, members of the board, Martha Kreitzman, Chief Financial Officer. Our ESSER funding has been aligned to the 5 priorities for success, which are in turn aligned to the 3 goals of the Milwaukee Board of School Directors. I want to give some overview of our school operations budget, just to show in relation to receiving these funding, how important it is to receive the ESSER funding for our school district. This first pie chart shows you our operations fund, our nutrition fund, our extension, construction, and categorical. Categorical are grant funds. That's what the ESSER funds would be considered categorical funds. And if you notice the big blue part of the pie, that's our school operations fund. We depend greatly on our revenue limit for the operation of our school district. And then the turquoise color, the lighter blue color, is the categorical or grant funds. So you can see how heavily we rely on grant funds for the operation of our school district and to supplement that operation. And then you'll see, well, actually you won't see, there's a little piece in between the green part of the pie and the turquoise color, and that's the construction fund. We have not been funding the construction fund at a level that should be possible due to the fact that our revenue limit has been, limited for quite a long time, and some future slides will go through that. This just shows that we are good fiscal agents for our funding. Our school operations goes to the schools, and a majority of it does, 91%. And that's so that we can provide the best services for our students. So as good fiscal agents, we saying that we need these ESSER dollars is in line with our practice. The elementary and secondary school emergency relief program is made up of 3 different funds. ESSER 1 is the CARES Act, which we received about 41 million. Well, altogether 56 million, but our school district received 41 million. We also oversee the program for the private schools, which received 15 million. ESSER 2, which was just approved in May during the budget process, is part of the Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriation Act. These are all part of a stimulus bill, and each of these shows our period of performance. So we can spend ESSER 2 up through 2023, and that's $225 million. And then ESSER 3, which we're here tonight to discuss, is the American Rescue Plan Act. And those fundings can be spent up through September 30th, 2024. And it would be worth $506 million for our district, 20% of which has to be reserved for mitigating learning loss. To give you a history of our revenue limit, which ties into the discussion tonight, this is taken from the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction. What it's showing you is our per pupil, well, this is it's a state document. It's not specific to Milwaukee Public Schools, but the revenue adjustments that were given to the per pupil amounts each year, starting in 1993-94. And CPI for 1993-94, it says $190 or greater. And the CPI term means Consumer Price Index. It's a index that shows us like a cost of living increase or an inflationary increase. So we know our costs keep going up, and therefore if our revenues don't keep pace, we'll end up in a deficit or we'll have to cut costs. and that means cutting services for students. So this chart shows you from 1993, it goes to 2010-11, that each year pretty much, $200 some increase to our per pupil revenue limit. Then you get to 2011-12. They actually took money away from our per pupil revenue limit. And then in the years going forward, they added a little bit to it. So we were down $528. The next year they added $50, then $75, then $75, then zero from 15-16 to 18-19. So when you've heard me say in different budget deliberations that our revenue limit has stayed flat, this is what I'm talking about. In 1920, under the new biennial budget, well, for the past couple years, we did get revenue limit increases, 175 in 1920 and 179 in 2021 for this current year. But if you add up those numbers of the increases from 12-13 to 2021, it still doesn't get us quite back to the 500 some that they took away, because that 500 number on the screen is a statewide average. It's not our particular. Ours was actually a little higher than 528. So to show this to you again in another way, from 2004-5 to 2010-11, you can see in the middle row there, the per member increase from $241, $248, $257. So, $200 some each year, which was considered a cost of living increase, which was built into the revenue limit. Then this is particular to Milwaukee Public School. In 2011-12, we lost $556 in our per pupil. So we went from $10,104 down to $9,548. And if I go back, you'll see that the state average was $528, but we lost $556. And then going forward, you'll see in 11-12, our per pupil was $9,548. And then when we get to 2021, well, let me go back to 2018-19, our per pupil was $10,122. I'm going to go back one slide again. Our per pupil in 2010-11 was $10,013. Our per pupil in 2018-19 was $10,122. And that's what we mean by it stayed flat all those years. So we've had about 10 years of flat revenues, but our costs keep going up. And that's why each year we present a budget where we've had to make some difficult reductions. And in 2019-20 and 2021, you see those increases we've had recently. But even if you add up the $50 increase from 12-13 and the 75 for 13-14 and the 14-15 increase of 75, plus the increases in 19, 20, and 21, you still won't, it almost gets there, but it doesn't quite get to the 556 decrease. Another way of looking at it is what if we had been given just 1% per year? That's not even probably what the consumer price index would tell us we should have gotten. It's probably lower. So 1% a year. The second column, the first column shows the years. The second column shows this is a 1% increase each year. The third column shows our actual revenue limit, what we received. This is with no exemptions, so it's kind of a base revenue limit. and then our actual per pupil. And then if you skip that next column, because that's our average number of pupils, and go to the next one, if we were increased by 1%, that shows the new per pupil we would have received. And then there's an updated revenue limit. So if we had this new per pupil, the 1% increase per pupil, we would have received that much in revenue limit. Like in 2011-12, we would have received 47 million more in revenue limit. And you can go down, that last column shows you how much more million we would have received each of those years. And that would have come to a total of almost 400 million for the 10 years that we remained flat. Now, if you think about the increase here showing 1%, what if it was 2%? So now double that, and we would have had almost 800 million. So when we think about the ESSER funding we're receiving, yes, we need this funding. Just to give some information on the CARES Act and what it was spent on, we had about 41 million to spend. It was spent on professional development to help staff at schools with turning to online learning. For COVID pool testing, for COVID information for families and staff, for personal protective equipment and sanitizing, for facilities and air quality, technology, including hotspots and Chromebooks, and then for contracted schools who also shared in the funding. The indirect costs are costs that are difficult to put a direct charge to, such as having the lights on when we do all these different activities, or payroll costs to keep up with paying staff that might be funded, like for the professional development, etc. Then, this is our proposed ESSER funding. And for ESSER 3, that's like a kind of a so far analysis. We do need to consult with various groups. So this is just showing what, when we presented to the board in May, we showed a balanced ESSER 2, and some of the planning, because we overplanned, went into the ESSER 3 beginning planning phase. So ESSER 2, this is a summary of what was approved with the amendments. So direct services under accelerating learning, high quality materials, and professional development, and the amounts, and that came to about 64 million. Health and wellness was mental health, COVID-19 and health related, social emotional learning, physical education, and experiential learning. And those categories came to about almost 25 million. Then facilities, air quality, plumbing is really the water bottle filling stations. Those were moved from ESSER 2 into ESSER 3. Electrical and interior, so some facility changes to help with learning. Air quality included HVAC systems and also some outdoor classrooms. Total facilities came to 109 million. And then we also have other educational services and programs, and that was close to 28 million, bringing our total to the 225 million. Now, ESSER 3, all of those are aligned with the same priorities from ESSER 2 for right now, as far as what's been planned so far, or proposed anyway. So ESSER 3 plan development, I'm going to turn this over to Shelley Perkins, who is here to provide an update.
Thank you, Martha. Good evening, President Peterson and members of the board. Shelley Perkins, ESCA Compliance Manager. For our ESSER 3 plan development, we have 5 proposed priority areas: accelerating learning, health and wellness, facilities, technology, and clubs, activities, and student safety nets. For our planning teams, we will include our district administrators, school leaders, teachers, and parents and guardians. As part of our ESSER 3 plan development, we will also consult with various stakeholders, which will include our students, families, district administrators, school leaders, educators, unions, our tribes, civil rights organizations, and stakeholders representing the interests of students, and that would specifically include stakeholders representing our underrepresented student subgroups, including students from low-income families, including each major racial and ethnic group, children with disabilities, English learners, gender, student experiencing homelessness, children and youth in foster care, and our migrant students. If you are interested in more information regarding ESSER 3, you can go to the website listed there, our MPS website. We also have a ESSER website that's under development. You can attend our stakeholder series as well as our Milwaukee Board of School Directors meeting. Now we look forward to your input and comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. At this time, I would like to move to public commentary, and afterwards, we will have comments from the board and questions, if there's no objection. Seeing no objection, Madam Secretary, could you please have the first person present to the board?
Yes, Mr. President and members of the board, we have received 83 pieces of written testimony regarding this item. And the first speaker on the platform registered to speak is Helen Harris. Please state your name and spell your last name for the record and begin your testimony. Helen Harris. It looks as if the device is muted.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Okay.
State your say your name, spell your last name, and begin your testimony.
My name is Helen Harris, Harris. I am a member of St. Mark African Methodist Episcopal Church and a member of Common Ground. I am a retired MPS principal, and I have 2 grandchildren attending MPS schools. In the short time since Common Ground learned about this $506 million in COVID recovery funding, we have organized 3 listening sessions and heard from over 100 parents, grandparents, teachers, principals, and community members about how they think this money should be spent. Based on what we heard, we have developed 4 recommendations. 1, $50 million should go to schools to spend as they see best based on their student and school needs, allocating $200,000 per school plus $454 per pupil. Funding decisions would be made through principals and the school guidance councils with input from families, students, and staff. 2, $48 million should be used to create and implement a comprehensive, in-depth, mandatory professional development program for teaching staff. Much of this money would be used to pay staff for training or to pay substitutes to provide relief time for staff. Investing in our human capital is an excellent use of one-time money. 3, $1 million to speed up the hiring process and boost recruitment of teachers and other needed educators. There is a need to reduce vacancies and increase the number of teachers of color. 4, 1 million for tutoring. Parents and community members believe that a strong tutoring program is essential for our children during the school year. Common Ground would like to be part of this effort and will recruit volunteer tutors. We look forward to meeting with Dr. Posley and President Peterson to further discuss our proposal. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. The next speaker. One moment, Mr. President. The next speaker that we have on the platform is Salil Harvey. Please state your name and spell your last name for the record.
Can y'all hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
It's Saleh Harvey.
Spell your last name and begin your testimony.
Harvey.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Soleil and I am a LIT member. I want this money to go towards the ventilation and infrastructure of MPS school buildings. These buildings are very old, and since we know that this is basically one-time money, this money should be invested into making the school building suitable for students, such as the following: investing money into the water pipe so that they can stop bursting like they did before. Better ventilation so that teachers don't have to keep buying fans. Every I have encountered have been hot in school, in high school, and being told when and when not to get a drink of water. And now because of COVID, the whole time we are carrying our jackets, our coats, and our book bags because we can't access the lockers. In conclusion, I am asking you to use this money to better these very old buildings.
Thank you. The next speaker that we have on the platform is Jalen Watley. Please state your name and spell your last name for the record and begin your testimony.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
My name is Jalen Watley, Whatley.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jalen Watley. I'm a LIT fellow. I'm going to share with you why I think ESSER 3 funding should be spent on mental health resources. A full year of quarantine has drastically affected the mental health of a lot of students, and they still haven't recovered from it. Being in the house 24/7 and not having physical social interactions with others has certainly made a lot of people depressed. A lot of students use school as a safe place to get away from personal things that were going on at home. And when coronavirus shut everything down, they were forced to be there all day, every day. Additionally, virtual school wasn't easy for a lot of students or teachers. Students who learned better hands-on or in-person had a really hard time this year keeping up with the assignments. And the teachers who really cared about education couldn't teach at the best of their abilities. A lot of students' grades dropped and most people were unmotivated and got sad about it. I think we need funding for more mental health resources and even after-school programming so students can get back into social atmospheres and also keep them from running the streets. Students deserve someone to talk to so they can heal from the rough year they had and so they can be 100% in the classrooms.
Thank you. The next speaker that we have on the platform is Willie Jude. Please state your name, spell your last name, and begin your testimony. Mr. Jude? It appears that the device is muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Willie Jude. That's Jude.
Thank you.
A former administrator, a member of Community Baptist Church of Greater Milwaukee, and a member of Common Ground. On behalf of Common Ground, the Sherman Park community, the 40-plus congregation, and a vast number of organizations that support Common Ground, we want to thank Dr. Posley for including funding to complete the Washington High School renovation, and we're asking for the board support. Common Ground will be bringing just over $736,000 in outside funding to this $2.3 million project. Washington High School outside athletic space will serve as one more reminder, or one more sign of hope for our students, the Sherman Park residents, as well as other community organizations. We believe this is a golden opportunity to create a valuable school and community resource and invest in our neighborhoods. The renovation of this field will greatly serve our students, Washington High School, as well as multi-generational families in the community and beyond. The investment will assist in revitalizing Washington High School and the Sherman Park. While academic take priority, a quality athletic field should be the essential part of any effort to engage students. We know from research that facilities and related student activities provide invaluable lessons in self-discipline, conflict resolution, leadership, and teamwork. This evening, we are proud that the Milwaukee Public Schools are joining with Washington High School, the Sherman Park neighborhood, and other organizations to create a first-class, first-rate facilities. Once again, we want to thank Dr. Posley, President Peterson, and the members of the board for your positive consideration. Once again, have a great evening.
Thank you. The next speaker on the platform is Amira Randolph. Please state your name, spell your last name, and begin your testimony.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Amira Randolph, and today I'll be telling you what the ESSER money should be going towards in my school, along with many.
Amira, could you please spell your last name and begin your testimony?
Randolph, Randolph.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Amira Randolph, and today I'll be telling you what the ESSER money should be going towards in my school, along with many others. We as students desperately need new books and learning materials. We have these outdated books that refer to history that we have been taught 10 times over. History that has also been proven false on many occasions, might I add. History updates itself every single day, and it's time that I stop having to be taught about MLK and Rosa Parks every single year. If I want to go out and learn that it's not true, that Christopher Columbus never even reached America, let alone discover it, that's not something I can find in an MPS textbook. These false teachings can also be detrimental because you cannot forget the past. You cannot forge the past. What happened, you can't forge what happened, basically. And it's as if we're using it like a game of telephone, and we're all being taught these things that are not true. I would also like to express the need for more ethnic studies, books that teach me about people before history. I would also ask for the money to be used to invest in materials to help everyone in the building succeed, such as materials for the janitors to keep buildings sanitized and causing MPS to look old and dirty. Take out those cloth tiles that have been there since probably even before the 90s. That system is no longer sanitary. Sometimes my school doesn't even have soap, but I know it is because individual schools need more funding for materials. So my ask today is that we take care of those needs with the money. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker on the platform is Amy Miziaco. Please state your name and spell your last name for the record and begin your testimony.
Amy Mizialko, Mizialko.
Thank you.
Superintendent Posley, President Peterson, Wisconsin Public Schools stand to lose $2.3 billion in emergency relief federal funding for pandemic relief aid under budget action by the legislature's Republican-controlled Finance Committee, who has failed to meet the federal maintenance of effort requirement. $2.3 billion is due to the students of Wisconsin, including Milwaukee Public Schools students, to reopen school buildings safely and to provide for the academic and social and emotional needs of students. It is our duty to stand up for public school students who have suffered disproportionately because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Black, Brown, and Indigenous children, children with disabilities, children living in poverty, children who are English language learners, migrant children, and children experiencing homelessness and children in foster care. There is so much at stake. Critical wraparound services like counseling, tutoring, and crisis care, healthy meals, air quality and ventilation, mental health services, and after school and summer school opportunities. Unless Republicans properly fund Wisconsin public schools, all 421 school districts in Wisconsin will lose out on a combined $2.3 billion. And to be clear, the students of Wisconsin's 421 public school districts will lose out on $2.3 billion that is earmarked for them. On behalf of the members of the Milwaukee Teachers Education Association, I ask that Superintendent Posley and all MPS board members continue to demand that the Wisconsin legislature do right by our students. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker on the platform is Kadarius Farmer. Please state your name and spell your last name for the record.
My name is Kadarius Farmer, Farmer.
Thank you.
I think that the money that the MPS schools receive should go toward new qualified safety members that attend MPS schools and that should watch over the students, and that they should go towards tutors and not be wasted on unnecessary essential items such as metal detectors and book bag scanners. And I think that they should add more money to supplies and other needs that students need, and after school activities also. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker that we have on the platform is Kamari Jefferson. Please state your name and spell your last name for the record. Hello.
Good afternoon. My name is Kamari Jefferson, Jeffferson.
Thank
and
you.
I am a member with LIT. I think that we should have better Chromebooks and materials. Chromebooks can really help this new generation. Kids these days do better on electronics, and when we have a rundown materials from a long time ago, we have to deal with the ones with bad quality material, and that affects the quality of our work. Teachers also need better technology as well. Sometimes we have to deal with waiting 10 minutes for a Dell desktop to load. No one uses monitors anymore in the district, deals with the most undeserved youth in the state, but not investing in money to help close the racial inequities. It might not seem like a big deal to some people, but racial inequities happens in the most micro ways. Again, I ask to invest this money into teachers and students to be able to receive the best quality education as possible.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, members of the board, the item is back with the board. I wanted to alert you that we do have a student who's been trying to log on, and she should be on the platform shortly. When she is, I will notify.
Thank you very much. So now it is up for our members to make comments or ask questions. I would just like to do it, if you don't mind. We'll try just raise of hands and get the queue. But before anybody speaks twice, I'll ask if there's anybody who hasn't spoken, so it's fair. So who would like to start off? I can't hear you, Dr. Mann.
Vice President Taylor, and Director Leonard.
Okay, let us go there. Vice President Taylor.
Thank you, Chair Peterson. I understand there was a plethora in the list of individuals or organizations that we will be working with in reference to ESSER 3, but what would that communication and what would that process look like?
Excellent.
Administration.
Thank you. Administration.
Chair Peterson and members of the board, there's we talk about a speaker series, and that is where we will have a number of speaker series where we will bring this information to those groups to share this information on an ongoing basis, to receive feedback. And also, when we come back, our plans is to come back to the board in August or September, and also be able to take testimony there as well. So give an ample opportunity for those individuals to weigh in and to provide feedback.
Director Taylor, do you want to follow up?
Yeah, I guess a little more specific when we say a speaker series, is that like a virtual meeting where there are, allowed to come to, or is it another board meeting like tonight where they're testifying? I guess when I think about feedback and input, it's a little more inclusive in detail versus what we're doing tonight.
Chair Peterson, members of the board, yes, we are going to have virtual meetings. We're also looking for opportunities for in-person type of meetings as well. So a combination of both, looking and trying to schedule that throughout the city and working with the community. Anything you want to add, Martha?
President Peterson, Vice President Taylor, thank you, President Peterson. Martha Kreitzman, Chief Financial Officer. We also, on one of the slides, showed that we had an email set up so that people can provide input through that email. And we'll create other ways for people to provide input.
Thank you. Let us go now to the next person.
Director Leonard.
Director Leonard, yes.
Just a couple of questions. This is really in direct reference to what Willie Jude spoke. If I am not mistaken, and I don't know if you have this, the amounts on hand, but I believe that Common Ground has already produced a significant amount of money towards the Washington High School recreation center. I'm gonna call it that. I think it's more than just a field. So, and then I just want to definitely back them up on that. That would be such an added support to that part of the community. Undoubtedly, that would be helping with any kind of recovery efforts for the people that live in that area that use it. So when you drive by there, you see them using that field constantly. It is overpacked, to be honest with you. So anyway, just want to give a plug for that. And just if you know what that number is, that'd be great to know. Thank you.
Administration, any comment about the project on the Washington High School track area?
President Peterson, Director Leonard, and members of the board, I will have to get a exact number to you prior to the full board. We could get that information to you. However, I will say this has been a great partnership. We've been working back and forth to make this happen. There's been matching funds each time we had to do the development and renderings and things of this nature that had to go through. And we have been in a partnership with that. Common Grounds supported half, and the district did the other half. And so we're moving forward in the right direction to see a closure to that project.
Thank you. Any follow-up, Mr. Leonard?
No, that'll be good. Thank you.
Okay. Other commentary or questions by I see Director Herndon.
Director Gokul Gandhi was first, and
Okay.
then Director O'Halloran, and then Director Herndon.
Excellent. Okay, Director Gokul Gandhi.
President Peterson, administration, thank you for this presentation. I think once again, what would be really helpful is more details and a more robust plan. And so what I'd love to see during our next board meeting is a timeline of when things are going to happen, what constituent groups we're going to be reaching out to, what the numbers of our target audience is, how many students are we trying to reach out to, how many parents are we trying to reach out to, just really clear metrics on what are we trying to get and what feedback and input are we trying to get. And then on the opposite side, what is the plan to take that feedback and then incorporate that into the budget? So, President Peterson, I guess this is an ask, and I'm not really sure how to do this, but I just think just a timeline that has really clear dates and metrics attached to it would be really helpful.
Okay, administration, and you can also mention, please, when it's going to be possible for us to even apply for the grant. Administration.
Chair President Peterson, members of the board, we will be more than happy to follow through with that, but you have to understand that right now we do not have an application for any of these dollars to move forward to do anything. So we are trying to get information out, looking for direction. We knew that this is not a 100% detailed plan. Our goal is to bring the plan to start of what we need to do around scheduling. We laid out the 5 areas of where we plan to have individuals to provide input, and all of the other things that we will build on top of that particular piece to spend the month of July and some of August setting up that, working through that. We will be more than happy to provide that. We are in some ways working in the dark with this because we are trying to budget for an amount that we don't know what the amount is. So, and we also have existing costs that we have budgeted and laid out on a 3-year plan from ESSER 2 that we have to do some things with. So there is some decisions have to be rendered around those factors as well. Our goal is to get as much input as we possibly can from all stakeholders, anyone that will listen at us. When we talked about the series of going out to the community, that's to weigh into input. Each one of these committees have a number of individuals that will be comprised of people on those committees. And we kind of laid out what that will be. And our matrix is to get as many as we possibly can. But at the end of the day, we will do what the wish of the board is.
Administration, could you just repeat for the listening audience too, believe there are 5 committees that that are going to be dividing up and talking and investigating, and I assume that's where the recommendations will go, depending on the nature of the recommendations.
Members of the board, accelerated learning is one of the groups, as well as health and wellness is another group. Facilities, anything to do with the facilities will be a group. There's a technology group, and then there's a group of club activities and student safety nets.
Okay.
And knowing that we also have to put 20% of those dollars to learning loss. And so therefore our goal is that it will be found in all 5 of those areas.
Thank you. Follow up, Director Gogoldadi?
Yeah, just thank you for clarifying kind of the ambiguity that we're dealing with. I think it's helpful for us and the listening audience to hear that. And just, 2 quick comments. I really do appreciate the way that Common Ground, had the buckets of here's the amount going directly to schools, here's the amount, going directly to X. And I know that you have these 5 buckets laid out, but I think it would also be nice to have that number of how much of the money is going directly to schools, and then what is the per pupil amount, right? Remove facilities and all that other stuff that's not for our young people. And then just the other comment is it would be great if we were shared on the comments that are sent to the general account for the ESSER funding. So whatever public comments you receive, it would be great if we had access to those as well. So thank you again for your work.
Right. And just to interrupt the flow from the committee, Madam Chair, you said that we had 80 some comments already?
We do have 83 written comments that were sent to the Office of Board Governance and to board members. We also have one speaker left on the platform, ready to speak on the item.
Oh,
This was
okay.
a student who was
Great. I was thinking about that. Go ahead.
okay. And before we go, I just want board members to know I do have a speaker queue. We have Director O'Halloran, Director Herndon, Director Garcia, Director Simpson, and Carr. Okay. We will go to the platform. The speaker registered on the platform is Anaya Levy. Please state your name and spell your last name for the record.
Hi, my name is Anaya Levy.
Spell your last name and begin your testimony.
Levy, Leaby.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Anaya Levy, and today I will be telling you what the funds money should be going towards in my school, along with many others. I feel that schools need to invest into some new Chromebooks. The Chromebooks that we have now are been falling apart. There are pieces missing from the Chromebooks. Also, the textbooks that we have now is not relevant to us Black and brown youth. We desire materials that are up to date. Teachers deserve to not use Dell desktop computers that are still from the early 2000s.
Hello.
That's it.
Does that complete? Okay. Thank you so much. Mr. Chair, the item is back with the committee.
Thank you, Director O'Halloran.
Thank you so much. And thank you to everybody who testified, including the students. It's always good to hear from you all. One of my questions, and I would be interested in seeing how the speaker series rolls out, if people can like request somebody to come to their community group or like how that will unfurl. But my one question is, we've seen the ESSER 2 addendum to the budget, and now we've seen this presentation. These numbers are very large, and it's hard for people to understand what, with 50 million in testing and balancing, or 53 million for capital projects listed under ESSER 2. Do we have a list that rolls up to that 53 million so people can say, like, for instance, Humboldt Park showed up to the listening session last night to talk about they would like an elevator, and they would like to see improvements made to their ventilation system. Now, recognizing that elevators may not fall under COVID relief, and we may have to make a different case for that or find different funding, it would just be helpful for people to see what is included in some of these numbers and figure out then if there's a gap in their school. So they see their needs are going unmet in this plan. So is that level of detail available anywhere?
Administration.
President Peterson, Director O'Halloran, members of the board, Martha Kreitzman, Chief Financial Officer. When we presented the ESSER 2 budget to the board, there was a document that provided a detail, and we have worked on updating that document to include the board amendments. That document does not get down to the detail of each school and who's getting what, but the ESSER 2 funds have not started to be spent yet. And so there still are more detailed plans to be made. For example, with the facilities piece, they're using a contractor that's going to help come in and evaluate the ventilation systems to make sure that our plans agree with their evaluation of what needs to happen and which schools are priorities for that. And as far as other activities, will be based on an equity model of which schools need what supports. And some of those supports were laid out in the plan. The ESSER website will also keep updated information. So as people want more information, we will try to provide as much as we can. And she had another question, right? You had another question, I think I didn't answer.
It was more about the detail with the speaker series and the community input, just if that notification is going to go out through like our normal board notices or how the public can be made aware of these sessions. Or if they would like to request someone to come speak to their church, to their neighborhood association, you know, how they can solicit that input or that opportunity, I guess I should say.
Administration, do you want to comment on that, please?
President Peterson, Director O'Halloran, Martha Kreitzman, Chief Financial Officer. Having public notice is always a good idea for meetings like this. Some of the meetings will be specific to certain groups. And also, we have the email address. People can let us know if they want specific presentations or ability to provide input. And we could also come up with the phone number people can call to leave a message concerning that.
Chair Peterson and members of the board, one of the things that we're trying to do there is that group of individuals that is earmarked in the grant that we must meet with. We had something similar that we did during the referendum, where we kept those individuals abreast of what was happening with ongoing meetings. We are going that nucleus of people, we're going to do that on an ongoing basis with that group. However, there's others that may want to add, a church or whatever the situation may be. That group we could work with as well. But the group that we have that's been identified is the group that we have. Then we also have the group of individuals that will be working in each of these 5 groups on ideas and those kinds of things. And we are going to be feeding the information that we receive from our groups to the 5 committee groups that are working on this. And then they will be bringing back their recommendations after hearing from all of those individuals, and then we plan to bring that information back to the board to share with you what the recommendations have come out to be. These recommendations have come from the 5 groups, the overall stakeholder group, as well as anyone from the community that wanted to weigh in and provide feedback.
Thank you. Can I just clarify, Superintendent? You said we're going to have an entity that's similar to what we had with the referendum, or is also we're going to invite some of the same people? I was just confused.
President Peterson and members of the board, yes, the overall group that we are talking about, we talk about the students, the families, the district administrators, school leaders, unions, and all of those different groups. There is going to be a stakeholder overall group of individuals that we are going to provide information to on an ongoing basis, keeping them abreast of what's happening with, what our findings are, what we're finding out, new information that is coming to us from DPI, from the states, from the federal government, providing that information. Then there's these work groups these 5 work groups that are going to be taking care of each of these 5 areas. All of that information will be trickled down to the work groups, but we're going to keep individuals abreast of what's happening.
Thank you. Director O'Halloran, any other follow-up?
No, I just want to say thank you for this presentation, and I hope that members of the listening audience are as excited about this opportunity for our students as I am. So thank you.
Thank you. Director Herndon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a couple of questions. Number one, is Washington High School was mentioned earlier, and I know that we approved that development project a year or so ago, and I was wondering what the status is, or was it delayed because of COVID or something of that nature? That would be my first question. In terms of the funding, the board themselves, we've talked about what the priorities are with the ESSER funding, and we've got a complication, and that's the state of Wisconsin. The other thing about that complication, if we just take that off the table and say if we were gifted with these funds, another priority that had been discussed by the board was building improvement, building maintenance, and I wondered if we have budgeted from the administration's point of view an amount that we would set aside that would be removed from the discussions that we're having about everything else. The other thing is in terms of adding employees. The board already discussed that too, because the funding is not recurring. Therefore, if we add a lot of employees, regardless of what the positions are, we have to be cognizant of our ability to pay those costs in the future when this money is gone. So those are the things that I wanted to bring up at this point. Lastly, do we have a list of district priorities that may be ranked or prioritized based on the need? In other words, if we had our best guess, what would the priority be in terms of expenditures of the funding? That's it.
Okay, start with Washington High School administration.
President Peterson, Director Herndon, and members of the board. Washington High School, that project has been moving along, and this is, I want to say, basically about the third year of that work. The first year we had visioning, we had to get blueprints, a number of different renderings, just a number of different things happened that first year, matching funds, everything went well. We were on target to make this happen, and then all of a sudden we ran into a situation with COVID, just like anything else. And funding becomes an issue, as far as making sure that the group that's working with us, Common Ground, with funding, matching funds, and those kinds of things, and a lot of funders paused on giving money out. And so therefore, that has been a delay. We are back on track right now and geared for a successful finish. I'm going to turn it over to Martha to kind of talk through a couple of the other items, and I'll come back. Martha.
President Peterson, Director Herndon, members of the board, Martha Kreitzman, Chief Financial Officer. As far as the priorities and the building improvements, in one of the slides we showed the ESSER 2 and then the ESSER 3 funding. And some of the continuation of ESSER 2 activities that were pushed into ESSER 3 was the facilities, some of the facilities portion. And right now, just as a proposed plan, we have about 90 million already planned in ESSER 3 for facilities. But of course, that's being planned. We still have to have all our community input. And so what would be the priority for expenditures? We have the 5 areas that we talked about. And so that works out kind of nice with the $500 million number, where you can think about 100 million each, although that might not be the way to prioritize things. And I think as we hear from our community and get more input, we'll be able to better think about which priorities raise to the top. Right now, our work groups are kind of planning with that in mind, about 100 million per group. but that may not be the way it shakes out when we have community input. And you also saw the slide that shows our facilities needs as far as that pie chart was concerned.
Chair Peterson and members of the board, one of the things that to answer that question also, if we look at our deferred maintenance for the district, we look at that, we know that number. We have not done a great job there. That is a place that we know that we need to work with, with these dollars with, but also knowing that, the 20% is set aside for learning loss. And we strongly feels that the 5 areas that we have identified, the 5 areas that really need our attention and where these dollars should be going. So that would be our priority around what needs to happen with those dollars.
And in terms of staff hiring and possible layoffs?
Chair, President Peterson and members of the board, sorry about missing that portion of it. Our belief is that, if we hire staff, number one, we know these dollars are going to run out. However, if we do hire staff, I feel comfortable with the number of staff that we need to hire. I don't think it will be a major issue because we will have places to provide to keep staff. We have vacancies, and if we hired individuals and filled those vacancies, they would all could just fall right into those vacancies. And we have been consistent by looking at making sure that these are areas in which we need. When we talk about reducing class size, that is something that will help with accelerated learning as well. But we also know that we need teachers. So we can't go wrong in those kinds of areas. We will always have vacancies available for staff as far as teaching staff. And if we stay on the 5 areas that we have in place, I think we will be perfectly okay around that.
One last question to follow up. Are there any restrictions as to what can be spent, how we can spend the money that are obvious that people should know in advance? I mean,
Mr. President, you broke up. Did you say that again?
Yes, my question is, are there any restrictions in the federal legislation saying you cannot spend money on X and Y? Or is it it sounds pretty broadly defined when you start talking about learning loss and so on and so forth?
President Peterson, members of the board, Martha Kreitzman, Chief Financial Officer. You are correct that the legislation on this funding is pretty broad with how it can be spent, although it has to be spent on items or activities that help students, educators, and other staff due to the pandemic. So it should also always be related back to the pandemic. And so while it's broad, there could be some things that are not allowable. And for example, we've been asked, could you build a new building? And what we've been told so far is that building modifications would be okay, but building a whole new school building would not be allowable.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, do we have somebody who wishes to testify to us now?
Yes, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Senator Taylor is on the platform and prepared to speak on this item.
Well, thank you. Senator Taylor, welcome to the platform, and please share your ideas with us.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. Forgive me for not looking at you all, but I am driving in from Madison. And so I will speak, but not be able to make eye contact with you until I get off at this exit. So the first thing I wanted to say is that I hope that one of the things that the district will think about is the work that we presently have in the agriculture space. And I think that we all have to do a better job of learning what that means. I don't know how many of us are aware, but one of the brewing companies actually did a scholarship literally within the last week. And that scholarship is if students major in agriculture at a UW school, in particular, I want to say it was Madison, but please don't quote me on that. But they would get a full ride if they went to school to deal with brewery, learn whatever it's called. Forgive me, the brewery component. And so what I would like to do is just encourage us as a district to know that we have a lot there. And if we were to do that, that there's also a lot of USDA dollars and grants that come out that would literally help us to get additional funding to the district. As you all know, it is horrible. I'm just going to go on and say it. Horrible that there's a possibility of trying to defund schools based on individuals making the choice to keep children and families safe, and and to give the option to not have in-person learning. Well, I just want to make sure that we know that we might not be able to get funding through the normal doors that we are accustomed to, but maybe we would be able to get funding in some of these other ways. And one of the things that I really want to take a moment to commend the superintendent and Dr. Cotton, they have really dug in, and the district, I apologize, I forget the person's name that's in the grants area, but they have really been learning that we have more schools than just Vincent that are agriculture. Actually, Washington High School, a culinary school, is agriculture. And so I'm just hoping that we will invest in indoor growing as we have states all around us that are moving in the agriculture space for things that the district would not necessarily be able to do, i.e. legalization, cannabis, and that kind of thing. But the same type of skills that individuals would need to learn to grow, to process. There are jobs in these industries that are great paying jobs. Maglio's, for example, was just hiring 20 people. And so these are the kinds of investments that will not only bring us additional money, but help to place our children in the high demand areas that are coming. So I believe that the categories that you've already outlined are categories that would encompass that, like wellness and innovation and even technology are some of the areas that I know intersect with this agriculture piece. And I'll end with saying, just in the little time that the district has been in looking at some of the grants that I've been sending, they are applying for more than $500,000 in grants for sure, and maybe even more than that, because I'll never forget when the superintendent asked, so is this what we can apply for, this $750,000 and $500,000 and the other one for the district as a whole? And I'm like, no, every school, every entity can apply, and no, it doesn't mean we'll get it for all of them, but it's possible, that more than one school can get that kind of funding. So I just want to encourage us to invest in the number one industry in the state, which is agriculture, in a way that will help our district. And it will also help us with trauma-informed care in a way that I don't think that we've looked at. And so I just want to put in a huge pitch for agriculture as you decide what you're going to do, because it's a way to make money, to have our young people ready for work, and very candidly, to also help heal our community. And thank you so much for an opportunity to be able to present. And if you have any specific questions, I'd be happy to speak about, to answer those. And I've already said I would end, but I just thought of one last thing. In the community school model, and I'm sorry, Mr. President.
That's
okay. In the community school model, if we added the workforce piece in the community school model, agriculture is like spot on for that kind of work. And so that's all I got. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Senator Taylor, and good luck in the state legislature getting additional funds and keeping the federal funds here in the state. Thank you.
You're asking for a miracle on that end. they say they're going to fix it, Mr. President, but
Yeah,
you know,
right.
I'll believe it when I see it.
Yeah, so will we. Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I did see Director Herndon's hand go up. Is that on the item or a question for the senator?
Director Herndon.
Your mic is muted.
It was a question. The senator reminded me of one of the things that I didn't hear about tonight, but we certainly heard about in the past as a great need, and the board does recognize it. When the senator was speaking about all the different scholarships and programs that are available, then that's when it hit me, the issue of not having enough counselors in the high schools. I know that we've been very diligent in trying to add counselors, but there still aren't enough. So I just like to put that out there because the young people in the district, especially the young, the students with lit, have been begging for those services. And some of our schools are severely underserved. So just for the general public that's listening, for the rest of our new board members that maybe aren't aware of this, we have a dire need, and we need those services more than ever. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, I believe Director Garcia is the next person.
That is correct.
Director Garcia.
Yes, thank you to Senator Lena Taylor for those comments, and definitely gets our gears thinking about ways that we can connect, these opportunities that we have with some emerging opportunities, within our state. And just kind of going back to, my initial reactions to the presentation. Thank you, administration, for providing, I think, a very high-level overview. And just, I guess I have a comment, and then hope to get some clarification on one item. But I guess the first thing in regards to the speaker series, is just a, I guess like a opportunity for even, us as board members representing our district, if there's any way and form that we can be, plugged into those conversations. I think that would be a great way for us to interface, with our constituents. I know that's definitely something that I am very much interested in. So just wanted to throw that out there. And then in regards to, the I guess clarification within the overview here, I'm looking at specifically the slide between, ESSER 2 and ESSER 3. What I'm seeing here in the biggest, I guess, like jump from money being allocated is specifically within the health and wellness within COVID-19 and health related cost. So in ESSER 2, we asked for like 2.4 million. Going allocated to that. And then for ESSER 3, we're anticipating a little bit over $10,000. So I guess my question, and we sort of touched on this, through other questions that, some of my colleagues had, but I guess my question to the administration is, when we're looking at that, are we looking at the increase going more into personnel? I know in ESSER 2, we had a big focus on nurses, looking through what those sort of line items were within ESSER 2, you had everything from contact tracing to surveillance testing, all of that. So I know it's still in the very initial stages of structuring what ESSER 3 is going to look like, but I was just wondering if you had an incline as to, with this added amount, are we looking at more personnel? Is it more equipment? What are those needs specific to COVID-19 / health related costs? So I have that question. And then I just have one more thing for clarification, but before we lose that track, I guess.
Sure. Administration, could you respond, please?
President Peterson, Director Garcia, and members of the board. I will start with the stakeholder series. The stakeholder series, we just like we did with the referendum, it was the idea that we would work with Dr. Mann, and there were, basically 2 board members that served on that committee with us, and the board decides that. But the thing about it, those 2 individuals, so we welcome that. And that's what our plan was earmarked around, looking at it from that perspective for the stakeholder series. Then you kind of talked a little bit about this whole thing about this health and wellness piece and the $10,000 or so, basically $10 million that's set aside in 3. These are dollars that we did not completely cover in ESSER 2, and it covers psychologists, social workers, counselors. We talk about the surveillance testing and things of that nature. So we're looking at, and we're in the process right now. We'll be coming to the board on the 24th to talk about roadmap to readiness. There's things that are there that we will be looking at, as well as various type of testing and things of that nature. So those are some of the things that are there, and I'm going to turn it over to Martha to kind of wrap us up with that area.
President Peterson, Director Garcia, members of the board, Martha Kreitzman, Chief Financial Officer. Under the physical health and COVID piece, most of the additional funding for ESSER 3 fell under the categories of nursing, expanding nursing, and also the emergency paid sick leave for staff, that we were granted that ability through the federal government when the pandemic started. And then the board approved continuing that, but that would end after June 30th, I believe. So we would like to be able to continue that, as when people may need to be quarantined due to the pandemic.
Okay, Director Garcia, a follow-up or a next additional point that you want to make?
No, that clears it up. But, just going back to what Director Gulkangandi said, once we get a little bit more, or even administration, as you figure out exactly how this is going to be allocated, per line item, I think we're really interested in seeing how that breaks down into those specific cost categories, and, what is going into personnel, what's going into equipment, what's going into schools. I think that'll be very informative for us moving forward and making sure that we're supporting, this plan. And then I guess my next thing was more of a point of information. So going back to, the stakeholders that we're engaging within, the board, within this plan to ensure that we're, best informing, our next steps. I know that one of the stakeholders listed was tribal groups. So I just wanted a little bit more, maybe just context information in regards to, what has been the involvement that we've had specifically. I know that we have our First Nation Studies program. So just hear a little bit about, how tribal groups have been, brought into the conversation as we look for the, outlook for specifically the spending, but most importantly, just anything that has to do with ensuring that, we're being inclusive of tribal groups within our conversations.
Administration.
President Peterson, Director Garcia, Martha Kreitzman, Chief Financial Officer. We have tribal consultations about 4 times a year with tribal leadership concerning other funding that we have, specifically our elementary and secondary education funds. And we have been consulting with them since 2018, and it's the group is really starting to meld lately. And one of the areas that we have found a mutual interest in is like what these outdoor classrooms that we talked about with facilities. So recently in the latest consultation, we talked a lot about that. But yes, we will be continuing to meet with them and hoping that over the summer they will meet with us, because we did not have a planned meeting in the summer, but we're going to call that group together to consult with them over the ESSER plans. We've already introduced it to them, so they are aware in our last meeting.
Thank you. Director Garcia, anything else?
No, that was all. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Director Simpson.
Thank you, President Peterson, and thank you to administration for the detailed presentation, especially kind of like really going step by step about the underfunding that our public schools have endured for a very long time and how critical these dollars are to our students and our communities. So kind of related to that, for each of these work groups, obviously there is a long list of things that we need under each of those groups. I know we have to follow certain federal guidelines. Do we also have our own guidelines that we're giving those groups in terms of, how to prioritize that great list of needs?
Administration.
President Peterson, Director Simpson, members of the board, Martha Kreitzman, Chief Financial Officer. We are basically following what the federal guidelines are around this funding. And I meant to mention before under one of those other questions that in the attachment to today's meeting, we had a fact sheet that was from the federal government, the Department of Education, and it provides on page 2 and 3 some more detail about what is allowable under this funding. So we are using those broad categories as far as prioritizing. As you know, our district has many needs, and looking at needs assessment, each group is starting with the needs assessment and then creating goals and performance objectives and performance measures, and then a work plan. Also, they are creating an evaluation section because we want to make sure that everything we're doing, we can evaluate and show results. And then as far as prioritizing further, I think that would come through those community input sessions, because we don't want any plans that we make totally written in stone. We want to get that input. And then those finalized proposed plans would be brought back to the board for more input and discussion.
Thank you. Director Simpson, a follow-up?
Just thank you for that greater detail about exactly that step-by-step process the work groups will be going through. That's very helpful. I guess just related to that, when we think about prioritizing things within the district, I know that we will do this, but I just think it's very important that we keep in mind that our schools look very different, and that whatever we can do with these funds, should we get them, that we really look at how, through that needs assessment, what schools should be getting, more, that it's not the same dollar amount for each school, because some of our schools just have greater needs. So just to make sure I'm saying that and we're doing that, which I know we are. So thank you.
Thank you, Director Simpson. Director Carr.
Thank you. So I first want to say thank you to Dr. Posley, the administrative team, the faculty and staff for your leadership, your urgency, and your commitment and willingness to shift direction and priorities at such a moment's notice. I realize that this is a start, and so a lot of my questions of course, won't be answered because so many of us are kind of navigating the land of uncertainty and waiting for the decisions from the top down. So I understand that. I had a question as it pertains to the ESSER funding, and it was reading through the elementary and secondary school emergency relief fund documentation from the government. My question was along the lines of the difference between awarding and obligating funds. And I wonder if anyone from the administration is able to answer what's the difference between awarding and obligating funds.
Administration.
President Peterson, Director Carr, members of the board, Martha Kreitzman, Chief Financial Officer. Awarding the funds would come through our Department of Public Instruction because the funds go from they apply to the federal government, who then provides the funding to the Department of Public Instruction, and then they provide like a sub-award to the school districts after we apply for the funds. And right now, what we've heard from the Department of Public Instruction is that the application probably won't be out till September or October. And once we apply, then they'll provide us with an award and they'll provide us with an approved application. So if we try to apply with something that isn't allowable under this guidelines, they might approve so much of our plan, but not certain pieces. That won't affect our total award. It's just that we can't move forward on those pieces until we get that portion approved. And then throughout the period, we're allowed to do budget adjustments as needed, because as you know, a budget is a proposed plan, it's an estimate, and sometimes due to unforeseen things or maybe due to our progress monitoring, we notice maybe we have to shift a little different direction. They allow us to update that plan, and then they provide approval to that update. As far as the other question was obligating the funds, we obligate the funds once we are awarded, when we start spending the money. And sometimes you obligate for things that you haven't really spent out yet. Like, for example, a contract. You obligate that the board approves us to have a contract. We obligate those funds toward that contract. And then once we start the work on that contract and start paying those invoices, we start spending down on that obligation. And everything that all the work we do has to be finished by that September 30th date in 2024. And that means that's the last day of work that we can do. And then we can further pay out bills after that for about 90 days.
Director Carr, follow up or another question?
Yes, one final question, and I just want to say another shout out for including in the presentation and as a part of the priorities, clubs, activities, and student safety nets, because I mean, our children have been socially deprived for over a year now, and I think that goes hand in hand with addressing the health and wellness. My other question, final question, is with the 20% that is supposed to be used to address the learning recovery, what is the difference between, or where does remediation services fit within the proposed areas, or is that a part of the 20% to mitigate the learning loss? So does remediation services fall under accelerated, or does that fall under the 20% that's set to the side to address the learning loss?
Administration.
President Peterson and members of the board, Director Carr, those dollars, that learning loss dollars, is sprinkled through all of it. Accelerated learning, we're looking at tutorers, looking at materials. We heard students tonight talk about textbooks. We got textbooks, science and literacy, looking at more textbooks around trade books, things that can go home. We talked about the health and safety piece. It is sprinkled there as well to build in for psychologists, social workers, social emotional learning, and all of those things that's needed, as well as nursing services and facilities. We also could use that as well, because if the air quality is right and the things are right within the building, children are not missing school as much. So they're not getting sick, or want to make sure our children are healthy. Technology, the same thing there is we talked about, someone talked about Dales tonight, and those kinds of things, looking at Chromebooks and things that children can go home, experimental learning, things that they can take along with them to be actively with that, and clubs and activities. We know that clubs and activities work for our young people. And then we talk about safety nets. Those are the safety nets we're talking to make sure our young people do not fail. So any kind of thing that will work there is going to help. If it's one-on-one tutoring, if it's a help session, a study session, or whatever the situation may be, those, I would say, all 5 areas will address learning loss.
Okay. No, go ahead.
No. Continue, Dr. Carr.
Thank you. I just want to say that I think it would be helpful and send an even stronger message to add that language in there, because while the focus is on the recovery and the loss during the pandemic, fact of the matter is many of our children were underperforming prior to the pandemic. And so accelerated learning would imply to some that it's a fast pace, and the priority should also include the student achievement and the achievement gap that existed prior to the pandemic. So if it at all possible, included in the accelerated learning, I think it should also include accelerated and remediation, or something specifically to address the significant achievement gap that existed pre-COVID and that's going to exist post-COVID.
Thank you. Administration, do you have a comment on that? There wasn't a question.
Chair Peterson, members of the board, we will make sure that is added to our action plan, and the matrix that each one of these groups are pulling forward, and to make sure that directly what Director Carr had to say, we made note of that, and we will address that with all 5 of the committee chairs.
Thank you.
Thank you. And at this time, I would like to say a few things. And so I'm going to turn my gavel over to Vice President Taylor.
So noted.
Director Peterson.
Thank you very much. First of all, I just wanted to thank the people who testified tonight. They touched on many of the same issues that we're talking about, especially the youth from LIT talking about a number of things that we have since echoed. Just want to thank everybody who testified. And secondly, I want to try to put some things in the context. I appreciated the administration's report about how, had there been a 2% increase over the last several years, we would be looking at an annual increase in our funds in the hundreds of millions of dollars. And it reminded me of the fact that the superintendent said each of the 5 work groups are going to start with a needs assessment. And I just want to emphasize that that need assessment these groups should not dumb down that or lower it to make it realistic. They should say, what are the real needs? When we did that for the referendum, and we really looked at if we were to match class size, ratios of students to counselors, students to nurses, the whole we were talking, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Superintendent, about we need another $600 million a year annually. Okay. And similarly, that was not including, I don't believe, the $1.2 billion that we have out with deferred maintenance. And so I think, one, the needs assessment should be high. I mean, robust. This is what our kids deserve. And we then will have to deal with a prioritization. but we want the public to know that, I mean, they hear, oh, $500 million. This is like, oh, wow. Well, actually, given the starvation funding system that has been set up by the state legislature for years, we're in this situation. And I think as we go out to the community, and I'm sure this will be the case, but I think we have to very deftly explain that what was explained tonight in the slides, the underfunding that's taken place. So people don't get this impression that we're just rolling in money. I also think, and this will be my last point, that as we prioritize, we should look at opportunities that if we're investing in this might lead to more money. I mean, Senator Taylor referenced something in terms of agriculture. That is definitely something that we should look into. But I would also say the community schools, because the way we have funded our community schools has been jointly funded with the United Way and their commitment to find other institutions and community partners to help fund community schools coordinators. And so basically we have invested in some ways only 50% of the cost in the 12 community schools that we've had thus far. And I know I hope that in this ESSER 3 funding, we'll be aggressive and I know the folks in the community schools would like this, to try to raise in the next couple of years, will basically double the number of community schools. And if we do it right, that wouldn't all come from MPS budget. It would be half MPS and half some private donors. And so those are the kinds of things I think we want to keep in mind as well. But I like Director O'Halloran said, this is a great opportunity. We can see that our votes matter, because had November gone differently, we would not be in this conversation. And similarly, our votes will matter in the future, in the years to come in Wisconsin. And so I just encourage all those listening who support public education and our children to, be attuned politically at what's going on and push for the schools and communities our children deserve. So,
Administration, you have any feedback on Director Peterson's comments?
Vice Chair Taylor and members of the committee, I just would say thank you for your comments, and we are going to do just that. And especially when you talk about the needs assessment, we know that our student needs are great, and we are going to make sure that these groups really drill down and get that on paper. But the only sad thing about this, we don't have enough money to do what we need to do for our children, but we're going to make the best of what we have and push our thinking and make sure that our groups are giving us the information that's needed so that we can bring it back to the board so that we can have a great discussion around what we do for our young people.
Thank you. Director Peterson, any feedback or follow-up?
No, thank you, Vice President Taylor.
Thank you. Okay, the gavel is being passed back.
Okay.
So noted.
Okay, I see Director O'Halloran's hand up. We can take some more comments from the committee. Go ahead.
Thank you. I just have one question and then a comment, and then I promise I'm done. NPR published a story today that said, after months of special education turmoil, families say schools owe them. So I just want to make sure that as we, I'm sure it would fit in any one of the 5 buckets, that we are engaging stakeholders around making sure we're meeting the education needs of our special education families. So I don't really have a question on that. Just want to make sure that that's a note that we value their input. And then the comment was just around budgeting and funding. There will be a statewide day of action on June 21st that local groups are organizing throughout the state. And I am inviting the public to a press conference Monday morning, 9:30, to raise our voices together so that we speak with a loud enough voice that people in Madison hear us, that we have the funds to fund every need for every student in every school in Wisconsin. And we can do this. So just wanted to put the plug in for that.
Thank you. And that will be at
Mr. Chair?
9:30 at the central services. And I know that will be noticed so all school board members can come if they wish, if they have the opportunity.
So noted.
Yes. Okay. Did you have anything else to add, Secretary, Madam Secretary?
No, I just wanted to be sure the location was
Okay.
in there.
Great minds think alike. Okay. Any comment by the administration in terms of making sure that we have input from families who have children with special needs?
Chair Peterson, members of the board, absolutely. That is one of the stakeholder groups that we are going to be working with. And also each of these groups have individuals working on, out of the 5 groups, have support as well. So everything that we do, it will be for all children, including our special needs students as well.
Thank you very much. Are there other directors who wish to ask another question or make another comment? If so, please indicate at this point. Madam Secretary, I don't see everybody right now. Did anybody express interest?
I see no additional hands raised to speak on this item.
Okay, then do we have any other business, Madam Secretary?
Mr. Chair, that was the last item on tonight's agenda.
Well, I'll be, therefore, seeing no additional business, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you. Thank you.
Everybody.